Let's say Photoshop is like the base of a cookie, and photography is like the chocolate chips that go inside. Today, let's begin the journey of talking about photographer chocolate chip cookies. A shop. Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. I'm David Bird with Reality Reimagined. I'm an award-winning photographer and Photoshop artist that specializes in fantasy composite art. And we can now finally get to the photography education on this channel. It's been talked about for the past several weeks, but because of COVID and being sick and some other shenanigans, I was not able to record all of that footage. But alas, a few days ago, I did get into the studio and got the chance to record with Veronica. You've seen her in the retouching series here on the channel. We recorded a bunch of new content for several new tutorials in photography education. So over the next few weeks, there's going to be continued education in Photoshop as well as photography education. We're going to start the adventure today with talking about the lighting gear that I use, the strobes, the modifiers, best practices and alternatives to the gear so you don't necessarily have to buy the entire farm. This would be gear that I would recommend to you if you came to me and said that you're serious about making a financial investment in your photography career and business. And this equipment that I'm going to show you is going to give you the opportunity to shoot a variety of genres of photography. And then the next tutorial, I'm going to go through the cameras that I use and the lenses that I use. I'm going to show you what I currently use and then what I'm planning to purchase in the future, because spoilers, I use Canon cameras and they just announced 2 new cameras that's going to kind of change the map for Canon and for cameras for the next few years. And then after that, we have all the tutorials with Veronica talking about lighting patterns and best practices there, how to work with models and light meters and all that good stuff. So if you are new to this channel, welcome to the adventure. If you're a returning subscriber, welcome back. If you like the content you find today, make sure to give the video a like and consider subscribing to the channel, because new content will debut each week in photography and Photoshop education. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell icon so you'll be notified of that new content when you return to YouTube. And with all of that said, let's begin the adventure with talking about light. To get started, I want to make a couple of statements up front. First and foremost, everything we talk about today, all of the items we talk about today will be linked in the description below here on the video on YouTube. So you don't have to worry about writing down all the names and so forth. You can simply go to the description below and it will take you to the specific gear that we talk about, as well as the vendors that I recommend that you purchase it from. I also want to mention that I don't get any kind of financial kickback from the links below. This is simply a curated list, so that if you find something here that you want to purchase, you can go to the link below and take it directly. It will take you directly to the product and to those vendors. Secondly, I want to mention that I'm always going to be honest on this channel. I'm going to give you honest reviews about software and equipment and gear and so forth. And I'm going to be direct today because there's a lot of information to get through and I want to try to do it as quickly as possible. So let's start with lighting gear, the lighting strobes themselves. And let's mention that there are several different companies out there that make different types of strobes. They fall under 3 categories. There's either lighting gear that's stupidly cheap, there's lighting gear that's affordable, and there's lighting gear that's incredibly expensive. I have used all 3. I have seen real world examples. I have tested the expensive gear. I have owned some of the stupidly cheap gear, and all of my current gear is the affordable gear. With all due respect, I'm not going to name any names. I do not recommend the expensive gear. I have used it, I have seen it, I have seen comparable studies between it and the affordable gear. It almost is the same. And for the price points of the expensive gear, it's just too overpriced. And that's not me saying that shame on them or so forth. I understand what they're doing. I understand the companies and the things they push out. That's fine. But if you're starting in photography, you're wanting to get into this as a career and potentially as a business, your investments of dollars are very important. And I've known folks who have bought the expensive lighting gear simply because they thought it was the best and they had to have the best. And they financially struggled after that. So I recommend the affordable gear. Never spend your dollars on the cheap gear. I've bought cheap speed lights in the past for $50, and it was a mistake every single time. There is one inalienable truth when it comes to buying electronics, and that simply is you pay for what you get. When we started our business 20 years ago, we didn't have a lot of money, so we had to be very cautious with how we spent that money. Our first speed light, our first piece of lighting gear was a Canon 480 EX2. a Canon speedlight. And that speedlight lasted for years until it fell into a pool, and that's another story for another time. Over time, I've purchased different strobes, and as I wanted to try to get more equipment but not spend the most, I bought the cheap gear, and every single piece of that cheap gear broke within a couple of months. It would miss flashes, it wouldn't connect with the camera, it would miss the transmissions. They were just terrible pieces of gear. I do not recommend them. I understand if you can't afford affordable gear straight up, and you would say you have no choice. I understand that's your impulse. I would recommend getting a clip light from a hardware store before buying a $50 speed light, because ultimately it will be a waste of $50. So let's start with the gear that I use. I use the Godox system. It's a battery powered system. It has a built-in receiver inside the unit itself. So you do not need an external receiver for your transmitter that you would put on your camera to transmit to fire the flash itself. The Godox system, again, let's be direct and honest and straight up with all the truth here. The Godox system is a China-based company. There's nothing wrong with that. There's no politics here on this channel. It's a China-based company, but there is an equivalent of this in the United States, and that's the Flashpoint system. The Flashpoint system is exclusive to Adorama. Adorama is a great photography and electronics store, online store. I've purchased pieces from them in the past, but again, I want to be upfront and honest. The company that I have spent the most dollars with over the years is b&hphoto, and I've talked about them previously on the channel for the Wacom tablet cover, the Wacom tutorial. The Flashpoint system is the exact same unit, but it is based in the United States through Adorama. The reason why I recommend it is this. If anything goes wrong with the Godox strobe that you purchase, you have to deal with customer service from China. If anything goes wrong with the Flashpoint system, you deal with customer service through the United States. From what I've heard from other folks who have bought the Godox system and had to deal with customer service, it's ultimately a dead end. So I do recommend that if you're going to purchase one of these strobes, that you go with the Flashpoint system from Adorama. Now, I specifically use the Godox AD600BM. BM stands for Bowen's mount, which is essentially how any of the modifiers will connect directly into this silver housing front on the light unit itself. The Flashpoint system, the Explorer 600, is exactly the same. It's the same as the AD600. It's just called AD600 for Godox, and it's the Explorer system for Flashpoint. They're the exact same. This unit, as you can see, is $549. This is the non-TTL version of the light. If you don't know what TTL means, let me give you a brief explanation. It means through the lens. So that TTL is essentially like the auto setting for a flash. So if you're using a flash and you don't know what to power it up to be to get the portrait that you want, specifically with the settings you put into your camera, you can use TTL. So when you depress the shutter and the transmitter fires to the flash, it's actually going to fire one flash first so that the camera will see the light hit the subject, and then it will come in through the lens, TTL. The camera will read that and then tell the transmitter, set the flash to this power setting to get an even exposure. So we'll actually fire twice. That's what TTL does. The TTL version of this strobe is $100 more expensive. I do not recommend getting TTL. TTL is okay if you're new to photography, if you're brand new, and there are certain different uses for TTL, especially if you're using multiple photographers, like for action photography and events and so forth. But ultimately, TTL is not necessary because you can learn very quickly how to use a light meter. And I'm actually going to show you a light meter toward the end of this video today. And a light meter is a little bit more than $100, but it's a better investment of that $100 for that light meter and not getting TTL. But if you want TTL, if you use TTL, there's nothing wrong with it. It's totally fine. Then the TTL version of this strobe is $100 more. This strobe has 600 watts per second as it fires. That's its potential full power of light that it throws out. That's a pretty powerful bright light that you can use in portrait photography and newborns. You can use it for action photography, for high key, bright, overpowering the sun. You need all the lights. Then this light can do it for you. However, if you need a second light that is more affordable, there is a second light from the Adorama system, the Flashpoint system, that's called the AD200 Pro. This is essentially an overpowered speed light that has its own rechargeable battery that connects to it. It comes with varying heads to the light, so you can have a traditional flash head that goes on it, the rectangular head that you see in this image, or you can get a bulb essentially that extends outward, so that light will be thrown out from all sides of it. This bulb is reminiscent of the flashpoint system, the 8600, the Explorer 600, because the bulb extends outward like this. It gives you that housing where you can put different attachments on it, like this small can that goes on the front to shape the light and how it's thrown. So if you need a second light and you can't afford a second Explorer 600, then you can get the 200 series here from the same system. The 200 series is a 200 watt per second flash. You can get the 400 watt, and that's something that I definitely recommend. You can also get one that has two heads. So ultimately, it's going to throw even more light, but those are more expensive. The price points for these are not too far off from each other. If you're starting out in photography and you're looking for a lighting system, it is my recommendation that you at least try to purchase a 2 light setup, 2 strobes. If you can afford 2 Explorer 600s, that would be awesome. I use the Godox system. I have 4 of them, and I use them in all the gel photography that I do, all the fantasy composite work that I do. When I do headshots or beauty shots, I will generally just use 2 lights. So that's why I recommend the 2 lights. You can do fantasy photography with 2 lights. You can do gel photography with 2 lights, but I do recommend at least 3 lights for a gel photography setup. So I use the Godox system, and I'm just going to be honest with you. I bought the Godox system. My first 8600 I bought like 4 years ago, and I got it off of Amazon because it was during the Black Friday holiday sales in the United States, and it was incredibly cheap. That light that I've had for almost 4 years, the battery is still amazing. It's never broken. Nothing's ever went wrong with it. And then I bought 3 more Godox lights because, being honest, they were cheap. I'm sorry, I bought 2 more Godox. So I have 3 Godox, and my 4th light is actually an Explorer 600. And they all communicate with each other. They all work just fine. The batteries are interchangeable between the Godox system and the Explorer system. They're identical. It's just a different name and label, and the customer service you deal with is based in the United States instead of China. So Explorer 600 from Adorama, or the 200 system, which is a smaller system. To be able to fire these lights, you're going to need this transmitter. This is the R2 Pro. Now you can get a Godox transmitter that looks exactly like this. It's just a different name, and they are exactly the same. They're the same. They'll fire my Godox transmitter fires my flashpoint. I love this transmitter because, as you can see on the main display, you have the ability to set your different lights to a different letter group, so that you can independently have the different lights at different power settings. And yes, you can use some of them on manual or TTL. So I love this, and this revolutionized my photography a few years ago, like 5-6 years ago, when I got some of these transmitters, because in the past, when I used an old antiquated system of lights. I'm not going to mention the name, and I had to use transmitters made by Pocket Wizard. Pocket Wizard was a company, it still exists, that makes transmitters, transceivers, receivers, transmitters. You would have to have a transceiver on your camera and then a receiver attached via cable to old lights. And when you wanted to change the power of the light, you had to actually physically go up to the light unit itself, the strobe, and move the switches and so forth to lower the power of the light. So if you were using a 4-light setup and you had a 4th light boomed above your model with a whole bunch of sandbags and counterweights and so forth, and it's incredibly heavy, you would have to lower that whole thing down just to turn a little dial like half of a stop. With this device, you can change the power of the lights directly from the transmitter itself. It's invaluable. So again, Explorer 600, the 200 flashpoint system. If you need a more affordable light, you can't afford 2 of the flashpoint, the 600s, and then the transmitter here. Again, these links are in the description below. So if you can't afford a second light, you can only afford 1. And you're saying, hey, well, I want to do what he says, so I need a second light. I'm not making a joke. You can use a VFlat. Now, this VFlat, as you see here, is from b&hphoto. It's from VFlat World. They make highly durable, wonderful, portable VFlats. As you can see here, it's a $200 piece of gear. With all due respect to VFlat World, I've seen them in use. I've used them at photography conferences that I teach at. They're wonderful and they're great and I love them. I don't own one because the studio that I'm a co-op member of has them there. And I have I have 5 lights. So ultimately I don't need to use one. However, you can make a V-flat very easily. You can go to a hardware store and get insulation board and paint it white. Put some black gaffer's tape in the middle, or duct tape, that's fine. Just try to get tape that's not reflective. And instantaneously, when you stand it up like a book, you have a V-flat. You can use a reflector as a second light, depending upon where you position it into an image. Let's talk about why you would need a second light. If you're using your first main light, your first strobe in front of the subject with a rather large modifier, and we'll start talking about modifiers here in just a moment, usually you're going to use a second light to do one of 2 things. Either to fill in some shadows based upon the angle of your main light, or more often than not, you're going to use your second light as a kicker, something that separates the person from the background. So that generally means the main light's going to be in front of them, the second light's going to be behind them. So that when light cascades in, it's going to hit their shoulders, their backsides, their necks, their hair, and separate them from the background. You don't have to have a strobe to do that. You can use a V-flat. You can use a reflector itself, just a simple round disc. You can get a piece of poster board from a store and put tinfoil around it, and congratulations, you have a reflector. The key is to have a surface that light can bounce off of that's reflective, and then bring light back into the scene. The reason why I like V-flats is because you can use them beyond just being a light source. You can use them on the side that's black to block light, so that if you put a second light behind a subject, it's potentially going to throw light into the camera. Now, the shield that goes on the lens can stop some of that. Or if you're outside shooting in the sun, the shield can stop some of that light. You can also use a V-flat to potentially block any ambient light outside that you don't want, to create a shadow so the subject can stand in it. Or in studio, in a lighting controlled environment, you can use these to stop light from coming from the flash into the lens. You can also use the black surface potentially as a reflective surface, but it's not as reflective as the white side of it. So, and I like these, again, these V-flats because they fold down into these rectangles, one for portability, but number 2, this could be turned on its side and put right below your subject, right in front of their sternum, their chest. So that if you have a light right in front of them, the light's going to hit them and it's going to bounce off everywhere. And when it does, it's going to hit that V-flat that's right in front of them and then come back into the scene and lift the shadows a little bit. We'll talk about that concept in the upcoming tutorials on the channel as we go through the different lighting patterns on set with Veronica. So I do like V-flats. That can be your second light if you need it, or a third light. But ultimately, if you have the opportunity, I do recommend buying at least 2 of these. If you can't afford 2 of these, buy 1 and then get the 200 system. And if you can't afford any of these and you say, I don't have enough change to do it, then I recommend that you save your dollars. Don't buy the cheap gear and save it until you can afford one of these. Adorama, b&hphoto, Amazon, they have deals during holiday sales all the time. So if you're stepping into photography right now in July of 2020, or watching this video right now in July of 2020, wait just a couple months and you'll be able to save some dollars as you go for these different units. So let's go back and start talking about light modifiers, because now that we've talked about the strobes, you need to put something in front of it to shape the light. Before I show you the different strobes that I use and start talking about them, I want to talk about ultimately, why is all this gear necessary? This gear is not superfluous. This gear is needed. Its materials, its shape, the different accessories you can put on it, all goes to shape light. And that's the absolute key to quote unquote great lighting in photography. You can use the sun and you've got a light. It's there every day, depending upon the weather. It's still there even though it's cloudy. You can use clip lights. You can use a lamp. The reason why those things don't work as well for good lighting, where it's beautiful, is because it's hard to shape it. It's hard to control it, both in the intensity of it and how it's hitting the subject. So when you're outside shooting in natural light in the sun, or you're shooting inside of a building and you're using natural window light, the window light is a massive light source. So you have to move your subject around that light because you cannot move the light source. You cannot put something on it to shape it. Yes, you could put some curtains or drapes or whatever, or use a V-flat. The reason why light modifiers exist is to shape light and to control it. If you're stepping into photography and you're serious about it and want to make that financial commitment, I recommend getting light modifiers. because they will help shape it. They're not just a superfluous toy for photographers. They are a valuable tool to creating beautiful imagery. So the one light modifier that I absolutely recommend, the very first one that you should purchase, I use a 47-inch Octa Box. This shape in the octagon shape is, in my opinion, better on how it throws light, how it wraps around subjects, than a square modifier or a rectangular shaped modifier. This modifier is a collapsible modifier. It's essentially a giant umbrella. It has 2 panels of diffusion. The diffusion material is the white translucent material that goes inside the modifier and then on the outside, so that light has to pass through those, and that ultimately softens the light, controls it. Then you can buy things like grids to go in front of it. And I'm going to show you an example of that here in just a second on one of the other light modifiers. So this is a 47-inch Octa Box. This one's a rather large one. You can get modifiers that are in the 30-inch range, somewhere in that 30 to 39-inch range. And then you can get them in the 20-inch range, so 22 to like 29-inch range. Again, portable. If you have a small speed light, if you just buy the Explorer, the 8200 Pro, getting a smaller 20-inch portable Octa Box is fine. But ultimately, again, the larger of the modifier, the more light that you can simply throw out onto your subject. Not necessarily brighter, although it can be brighter, but it's the idea that when you're using a smaller 20-inch Octa Box, there's only so much light that can come out of that. So if you're wanting to do a full body shot of a human being and you use a 27-inch Octa Box, it's going to illuminate them, depending upon how you position, from top of their head to maybe about their waist. And then you're going to see a significant change of light as you travel further down to their feet. Using a bigger light modifier is going to throw more light. It's just that simple. So this is the 47-inch Octa Box. I do recommend a larger one like this. This comes from a company called Strobe Pro. They're based in Canada. They're a wonderful company. I have had different modifiers from other companies that have been around for a long time, some affordable, some very cheap. I've had the Strobe Pro modifiers for about 4 years. I started with this one. I absolutely love Strobe Pro. The quality of the material has held together for 4 years. All of the seams in this, the Velcro, the metal material, the umbrella brackets, everything has worked perfectly for 4 years. The bags that are provided with this for portability, perfect. The zippers are great, everything. The other companies I've purchased, every single one of them, every single modifier, about 2 years into heavy use, the zippers break, the bags are not as good, the seams inside the modifier start to rip and fray and split, and it just, does it affect the light it throws out? No. But when you're setting it up and you're working for a commercial client or a client you're charging money to provide photography for, and your gear has seams and holes in it and the bag looks like crap, like you pay for what you get. So I like Strobe Pro. They are on par pricing point wise for other competitors. Being honest, the major drawback to Strobe Pro is because they're a Canadian company, if you live in the United States, the shipping is a little expensive. But they tend to have promotions and sales where you get free shipping once you spend usually above $100 or something along those lines. So again, links in the description below. I recommend starting with the 47-inch Octa Box. Next is the 12x55 strip box. I have 2 of these. I love using these because of the shape of this modifier. It's a narrow strip that is, 12x55. So ultimately you're able to get almost a complete coverage of most human subjects from head to toe with this. Now you're seeing this with the grid in front of it. It's commonly generically referred to as an egg crate. This really further refines and controls the light and how it's thrown out onto the subject. So it's a separate piece that you have to buy with the modifier itself. If you can afford it, I recommend getting them because the Strobe Pro strip boxes are a unique size, so you will not be able to find a generic version of it. So again, 12 by 55 inch strip box. This can be used in any type of portrait photography. I love using these strip boxes. I use them primarily for gel photography and all the headshots I do and the corporate. I use them for pretty much everything and the grids themselves. So I do recommend them because the more that you can refine and control that light, the better. So we've talked about the light modifiers. We talked about the light units themselves. Let's talk about the actual light stands. Now you can get heavy duty light stands. You can get light duty light stands. Light duty light stands, simply the tension screws onto each section of the stand is on the only thing holding it up. When you get a heavy duty stand, it can simply carry more weight. If you get heavy duty stands, I recommend that you get the air cushioned ones, not spring. Because if you forget to tighten down one of the knobs that controls the different sections of the light, and during the photo shoot, the light falls because the pole falls straight down. When it's air cushioned, it's going to hit that air and slowly push out the air. It's not just going to shoot down, bounce, and have that hard bounce. That can potentially knock the whole thing over. So I definitely recommend air cushioned. But I do want to point out this specific stand that I've had for, gosh, probably 15 years, 16 years. It's a Manfrotto stand. And I absolutely love this stand. I've only seen it from Manfrotto. There might be other companies that make it more cheaply than Manfrotto, but I love this stand. Let's talk about it. It's two different sections. It splits right here in the middle. There's a hex nut and then the Allen wrench here so that you can separate the section. These legs collapse up. And essentially you pull this little section here out and then all three legs collapse up so it doesn't take up a lot of space. The wheels have the ability to be able to lock, but it's this trigger grip that comes with it. So that when you attach your light to it, all you have to do is pull the trigger and then you can move the light up and down so that you can change the angle of the light that easily. If you're using air cushioned heavy duty stands and you want to move the level of the light up and down, you have to undo different sections of the stand and lower it down, and it's heavy and so forth. I love this trigger grip. And again, this stand from Manfrotto, absolutely, it's heavy duty. It's lasted for 15 years and I absolutely love it. I use it every single photo shoot I do. Even if I'm using one light, I use it. I do not take it out on location because I don't want to get dirt or rocks or stuff into the wheels themselves, but I absolutely love this light stand itself. It's absolutely wonderful. So let's talk about a few other accessories and things that you can get, and then we'll finish up this video for today. This is an eye lighter from Strobe Pro. I love using this. This is essentially a reflector. I want to say up front, you can use a V-flat. You can use a regular round reflector that's cheaper than this. You can get a piece of poster board, put a silver tinfoil on it. Congratulations, you have a reflector. I like this unit because of its curved shape, so that when it's placed in front of a subject, when I do headshots, I will put a light with that 47-inch Octa Box right in front of the subject, usually at a 45-degree angle. That's called butterfly lighting, and that's coming up in the tutorials on the channel. So if you haven't yet, consider subscribing. So anyway, then I'll have the eye lighter right beneath that person, right in front of them, just out of frame on the camera, with that silver material tilted at a 45-degree angle. When the main light is right above them and it cascades down, hits the subject, hits the reflector, and comes back in, it gently lifts the shadows. I like this one from Strobe Pro because it comes with the silver panel material you see right now. It also comes with a white panel material that is not as reflective, so that you can use it for corporate headshots, regular headshots, whatever you need to do to fill in some of the shadows. I like it because of the curved nature, because a flat surface, when light hits it, there's just too many areas for it to bounce off and not come back into the scene. So because of the curved nature, it does help to shape the light and throw it back into the scene, so you're getting some of that light back. Now, when these came out, with all due respect, a lot of folks ran and got them, and they loved them because they would put them really close up, high up, like mid-chest level on their subject, so that in the iris of the eyes, you would see this strong circular catch light. And they thought the catch light was so cool and they loved it, and that's why they used the eye lighter. I personally do not like the catch light, because no matter what kind of retouching you do to the image, whatever the genre of photography that you're shooting, it always makes the person look supernatural, like they're a vampire. And I've never cared for it. When you use the white panel diffusion material instead of the silver, that catch light is a little less, so it's not as bad. I use these on a small light stand, a light duty light stand, very low to the subject, so I can just gently lift in some of those shadows. I use them sometimes on a medium-sized stand to get them up close for headshots. I will use them in gel photography and composites. I will put them above the model and boom it, because you can use any kind of uplighting. The light will go directly up, hit that modifier, and curve right back down to them. It's a wonderful piece of equipment, again from Strobe Pro. It's portable, and it is a little hard to take it apart simply because of the tensions and how it's put together, but it's a great piece of equipment. If you can invest in one, I do recommend it. If you can't afford it, that's okay. That's where you need to get something like a just general reflector or a V-flat or a piece of poster board, installation board, whatever, paint it white, put tinfoil on it, you got your thing. So that's the last of the equipment that I wanted to show you there. Let's come back to the browser, because this is the other modifier that I have. And I just simply did not set this up the other day at the studio to show it to you, because in Arizona, we're in the summer right now, and it's like 115 degrees outside, and Veronica and I were sweating. So when you see those tutorials, you're going to see me do this constantly. I don't have a condition. It's just really hot. And even though the AC is set to 75, the internal temperature in the studio never gets below 85 because the AC just simply cannot keep up when it's that hot outside. So this is a 33-inch beauty dish, and I have one of these, and I absolutely love using it. So I use the 47-inch Octa Box on most portrait work, but when I'm doing beauty work and close-ups where I want a different quality to the light, a different look to the light, I can never really find the words to explain it. I use this beauty dish because how light is thrown out of it is vastly different than the 47-inch Octa Box. The 47-inch Octa Box simply just attaches to the front of the light, and then there's just the two panels of diffusion on the inside. A beauty dish, any beauty dish, has this white metal plate right close to the bulb. So when it attaches to the light, you can see just a bit of the bulb inside. When the light fires, it hits the plate, bounces back, and then fills in the entire beauty dish. There's just a different quality to the light. There's different shapes to beauty dishes, different sizes. This one is obviously made of material, so it can collapse down. It's portable. You can get actual metal beauty dishes that cannot be collapsed down. The metal is much more reflective than this material. You can get silver material. This one has the white material. Now, what's not pictured is there are two panels of diffusion that does come with this one from Strobe Pro, one for the interior and one for the outside. And I'm not sure if you can get a grid for this one. I don't know if they have it on the website. This one is just something to look forward to purchase if you want to. If you know that all you want to do is beauty work, that's all you want to do, then I would recommend a beauty dish over the 47-inch Octa Box. But the 47-inch Octa Box is going to be a better variety of different genres for photography and provide a better look for you than the beauty dish itself. So the last thing that I want to point out is that light meter. If you've never used a light meter, that's okay. But essentially, a light meter tells you what to change the power of the lights to be so it can fit the settings you put into your camera. So if you know you want to shoot at f8, ISO 400 and 1/160th of a second, which is a good setting for any camera for portrait work, when you set the camera to that, the lights themselves have varying power settings. So you need a light meter so it can tell you, nope, right now with the power of the lights, what it's set at, it's actually reading at 5.6 instead of f8. You'd have to change your f-stop in your camera to have an even exposure. So then you know, oh, I got to bring, the light up or down, depending upon what you're trying to set your camera to. Now, in the videos that are coming on the channel for the tutorials, I do have a Sekonic light meter, but the one that I use, I just found out as I got ready for this video today that they no longer make it. So I have antiquated equipment, and that sucks. So this is the cheapest one that I can find. It's on b&hphoto. It's Sekonic L308XU Flashmate light meter. It's the most affordable one that I can find. And looking at the specs, it does the job that you need it to do. Is this absolutely necessary that you have to have a light meter for photography? No, it's not, but I strongly recommend, especially if you don't want to spend the extra dollars on TTL. And if you look at it this way, if you were to buy two of those Flashpoint 600s, Explorer 600s, TTL, that's going to cost you an extra $200 and some odd dollars. You can buy a light meter and save that money. And the light meter is going to benefit you in the long run. So that's all the gear that I would recommend. This is all the gear, the main gear that I use in almost all of my photo shoots. I have some extra modifiers, some extra equipment and so forth, but that's very circumstantial when I use it. This is the main setup that I use. Let's have some final thoughts and we'll finish up the video for today. So to recap for this is all the gear that I use and I've used for the past 5 or 6 years. In the 20 years that I've been doing photography, The gear that I used to use in the past simply just aged out because the technology changed. Battery-powered lights, the transmitters got better, the modifiers got better, and I continued to evolve my gear over time. I want to finish this up by saying this. At the very beginning of this photography education series on the channel, I want to tell you to spend your dollars wisely. And you have to learn why things work in photography. I say it all the time for Photoshop. I'm saying it now for photography. Too many times in my past, I spent a bunch of dollars and ran out because somebody said, oh, I got this one thing and it will enable you to do photography. So you need this one thing, you just absolutely have to have it. And I would run out and I would get it, but I didn't understand how it worked. Or more importantly, I only knew 10% of how it worked and never took the time to learn how to do more things with it. I didn't have time. I was afraid. I don't know what else to do with this. I just need to go and shoot. I can't afford that expensive thing. I have to get this cheap thing. I've wasted so much time and so much money over my career on faulty equipment, or I have failed my own gear because simply I told myself I didn't have time to learn. You have to learn why these things work in photography. You have to learn why it's important to meter your lights. And I know, well, I can't afford a light meter. I don't need to know that. I don't know what an f-stop is. Take the time to learn. If you're serious about getting into this, whether it be for a career in business or just a hobby, don't run out and buy the next big camera, even though I'm running out to buy the next big camera from Canon. But I know what I'm looking for. I know what I need. Some of the camera gear that I've had for 10, 15 years. And it served me well. But ultimately, as the tech's changed, I've spent time learning, I've tested it, and I've decided to invest my dollars wisely. Thank you again for watching this video. If you like the content, make sure to give the video a like. That will help this channel grow on YouTube, and make sure to subscribe so that you can see those new tutorials that are coming for photography education. The next one talking about Canon cameras and the lenses that I use and what I'm looking forward to purchasing in a few months. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, I will see you out there in the world of Photoshop and photography, and I'm going to have to come up with a new ending, and I say that on set, and maybe you can help me out. You know what? We're almost done. You can help me out. I've always said at the end of these videos, until next time, I'll see you out there in the world of Photoshop. So let me know in the comments below, how do you think I should end these videos? And please, be nice, be decent, don't say naughty things, don't make me have to delete your comment. Thank you very much. So until next time, I'll see you out there.